episode of the Evolve CEO podcast. In today's episode, we're actually going to be talking about a couple of really powerful resources for recreating what you truly desire in life, or recreating what success looks like in your life. And the first resource that we're going to be talking a lot about is quality world pictures. And then later in the episode, we're going to be talking about quality questions. But let's dive in and start with quality world pictures. So Tracey, can you please share with the audience, what is quality world pictures? What does this mean?
They would be the pictures that I've created and that I hold in my mind that represent what success looks like in each area of my life. But generally, we've created these pictures from a really, really young age. And a lot of people get stuck in these pictures. They become outdated and they strive for success in that area of life. But one, it might be outdated, or two, it might not even be really obtainable. So it's like I'm chasing something that isn't even a possibility.
So give us an example of your story around quality world pictures and kind of what drove you and what led you to creating the life that you have.
My story would be from probably about 3 or 4 years ago. So I've done a lot of healing work, and I didn't even realize that I was running this picture in my mind. One of my biggest stories of all is, I carry a bit of a story of feeling unsupported. We've lived away from family for how long now? I don't know.
2007.
Yeah. And we've had children away and, we've had to really step up and do everything ourselves. And that's by choice. But I realized this one day, I always, feeling unsupported, feeling like I'm just failing miserably in this area of my life, which is really that belonging and that connection, but also my family dynamics with my immediate family. And I realized the picture that I was carrying was, for me, success. What I had deemed from a very young age was being in close connection with my immediate, like my mum and dad, and my kids having their grandparents there every day, and me having that support. And I realized that this was the picture that I held. And it wasn't even a possibility because, we chose this life and we choose to kind of live away. And, we love the life that we've created. So if I have this picture running in the background, it's almost like I'm, trying to run this race that I can never, ever win. And it was this massive realization that I was like, I could never feel supported because those things don't exist. So how do I change that within myself? I know you've got a few different kind of pictures that you've really kind of tried to create your life by up until a certain point. What were yours?
So one of the times in my life where until I was way later, until I was actually 39 and I started doing this work. But one of the big areas of my life where I created a quality world picture which served me at the time, but actually become my nemesis later on, was when I went off to boarding school. I went off to boarding school when I was 14 years old, and it was both really exciting and really scary at the same time. So obviously leaving your family and going off to boarding school at that age is scary. You don't have the comfort of your family and your parents with you. But I also went to a big boys only school, which was a rugby school, and I was really good at rugby. So I was excited about that. But I created a quality world picture that I had to be highly successful, that I had to absolutely do everything that I could to feel validated. And I didn't realize that all I was looking for was significance, validation, and really at the deepest level, I just wanted to feel like I was good enough. Yeah. So this deep underlying world picture and drive about having to become the most successful person that I possibly can gave me a deep burning motivation, which helped me become into high quality representative rugby teams, into leadership positions at school, and kind of set me up to go into the corporate world. However, later on in life, that drive and determination, without realizing it, was coming from a place of feeling insignificant and constantly having to validate myself and constantly feeling that I had to prove myself, and also feeling like it didn't matter what I achieved, it was never good enough. So that is why when I was 39 and I went through a really, really tough period, kind of my breakdown, and it was kind of the breakdown, but the breakthrough period. this is when these type of conversations and the deep inner work and starting to realize what these quality pictures were that I formed at such a young age, which were still deeply ingrained into me as an adult, but weren't serving me anymore because I was pushing and burning myself out.
But yours would have been significance through the eyes of another.
Oh,
so you were looking
totally.
for validation. And, sometimes we strive for these things and we just push ourselves harder and harder, but it doesn't really bring that inner reward because I'm not doing it for myself. So, we can have pictures in all areas of our life. So maybe if we reference like our 9 pillars of success, love, and happiness, and just give a few more examples of how people can have these ideas of success that become really outdated and don't serve them any longer.
Just before we jump into the 9 pillars, I just want to touch on that point around, Tracey gave you an example of quality world pictures 4 years ago, but the picture was created in her childhood. And I just gave you an example of when I become aware of my quality world pictures when I burnt myself out at the age of 39, but it was created in my childhood. So the reason why we don't question or challenge our quality world pictures is because we're unaware of them for the most part. So mine, I thought, were great attributes because they helped me become successful. So that's really important for people to understand, that a lot of these agreements that we make with ourselves, a lot of these quality world pictures around what life looks like, what success looks like, what happiness looks like, are formed in our childhood. And it's usually to create something that we don't believe that we have, if that makes sense. So now, as Tracey spoke, we're going to segue into, because it's really important that we look at every area of our life, because we talk a lot about success in this podcast, and a lot of the people that we work with and talk about, they are successful people, and they've used a lot of these resources, these skills, and these traits to become highly successful, but they also want to now evolve past their level of success or their possessions or the life that they currently have. So the first pillar in the 9 pillars of success, love, and happiness that we always talk to everybody about, and it's where we believe everybody needs to start, is actually our mental health. And what is our quality world pictures around our mental health? Because to be fair, 20 years ago, when I was young and driven and entrepreneurial and motivated, didn't even talk about mental health, didn't even need to consider it, didn't even think about what a stressed mind could do to us. So it's only of late that people are starting to really, really dial in and taking the taboo away from mental health.
I think if I'm honest, if I'm thinking about mental health, mine would be the more I can jam into my life and the more that I could handle pressure and stress, that is kind of the idea of success. And then it's like I've had to rewrite that in myself. We often teach now that less is more, and that a lot of people don't realize how much stress, it's kind of be that person that just handles it and just, keeps pushing through and keeps pushing through. But the next pillar would be physical health.
I just wanted to touch on the mental health
sorry.
again, because it's so important. When it comes to your mental health, there is so much information and everybody's talking. You only need to go online. You only need to type in how to improve my mental health. And there will be so many things like sleep and meditation and grounding and well-being and wellness. Like, the amount of information is not the issue. The issue is, if you've always been a highly driven, motivated, successful person like Tracey and I have been, and it's kind of just like deep down, it's kind of like when the going gets tough, just get tougher, right? You just need to push through. Then these quality world pictures, you may be fully aware and trying to do meditation, to try and give yourself some silent space, to work on your mental health, knowing that it's really, really important. But deep down, these world pictures and these programs and these beliefs and these conditions, your mind is saying you're not allowed to slow down. It's like your mind is controlling everything. And it's saying when you slow down, it makes you feel guilty. It makes you feel bad. It's like your egoic mind is taken over, and it's just like, no, you're not allowed to rest. You're not allowed to slow down. You have to keep thinking. You have to keep aware. You're kind of like your brain is in the survival mode. So if you don't break those quality world pictures, or if you don't get help to dive deep into when that quality world picture was created and anchored, like mine was when I went to boarding school. If you don't change that, it becomes really, really, really hard to introduce these good, healthy mental health habits into your life. It's kind of like the mind starts getting in conflict with itself. The unconscious mind won't let you slow down, and the conscious mind wants to. And that conflict creates more mental stress and actually makes things worse. Did you want to add on to that one?
No.
So, segue into physical health. And this is really, really important as well, is because the mind and body are connected. But Tracey's just going to share with you, I'm sure, the quality world pictures of what our physical health should look like when we're 20 and we're resilient and we can kind of abuse ourselves and bounce back really fast, to when we're like Tracey and I are in our mid-40s, the body's not as resilient.
You know, even that idea of what I need to do to get in shape, and your body changes and it doesn't respond the way it once did. So that has to change as well. You know, even people I see that they'll train like they are in their 20s and then they don't really replenish themselves afterwards properly because that's what they used to do. So it's like, where are my pictures outdated? And I even see as people get older, sometimes people might even like start training for, I don't know, a marathon. I don't want to say that that's not great, because good on them for kind of pushing themselves, but I do see the extreme where they just don't have that ability in their body and they push through and end up with lots of injury. Even as we get older, I 4 years ago broke my shoulder and I really just could not go back to doing the training I used to. So I really had to look at how I could reframe that picture in my mind of what that looks like and what success looks like in that area for me.
And to that point, if the mental health programming is around always pushing the limits and the need to push yourself, and your mind thinks that if I need to reinvent myself, then I need to do something extreme like a marathon. That is why we can actually get into so much more deeper stress and conflict and kind of get out of balance, is because more often than not, we actually need to slow down, rest and repair than take on the next massive goal or achievement that we want to achieve that is pushing us past a limit that the mind and the body are ready to handle, if that makes sense. Now, I'll give you an example of that. Another story of myself using these quality world pictures of Greg has to be constantly pushing and striving and the best that he can be. When I played rugby and in those younger days, I pushed myself beyond comparison and my body was resilient and I could handle the knocks and all of that sort of stuff. But when I stopped playing rugby and then I was into my 30s, my mind still felt like for Greg to stay fit or achieve or be successful with physical health, he had to do something of high extreme. So I joined CrossFit. Now, I absolutely loved CrossFit because it would push me to those limits, but I kept on getting injury after injury after injury. And it was really hard for me to let go of it. I'd come away and I'd heal and I'd repair myself, and then I'd want to go straight back into it because I believed physical health, I needed to push myself to the limit. Changing that and starting to look after myself and resting and repairing and doing proper rehabilitation and just completely changing what physical health looks like in my 40s has been an absolute game changer.
I had a lot of programs running where it was almost like a beat up to do things, push myself harder and harder. But, there's so many other areas of life. Do you want to just quickly rattle around all of them, but maybe not give example on them?
No, I think we'll tap into the third pillar that we speak about, because the first three pillars are all internal. These are all about us. This is our internal world. And the third pillar is spiritual health. So pillar 1 is mental health, pillar 2 is physical health, and pillar 3 is spiritual health. Now, personally, spiritual health, I had no idea. It wasn't even on the radar. I thought spiritual health was only for people who were religious and went to church, and I didn't grow up in a religious family. Then when people would start talking about some of the spirituality or kind of universe and all of that sort of stuff, because I had no idea, and my quality world pictures around spirituality was literally a shutdown. So it was like I wouldn't accept it. If I couldn't logically understand it, then it wasn't true. So I would then ridicule people who were on the spiritual journey or even meditation. Like 10 years ago, if somebody said, oh, you need to meditate, I'd say, oh, are you serious? That's just for hippies. And I was so far removed from what spirituality meant that I was actually disconnected from myself. I was disconnected from my higher spiritual self that I am now fully aware of and is really, really, really important. And this was a massive paradigm shift for me. And a lot of people in the world right now, they are waking up. They are actually having energetic and intuitive or spiritual or whatever you want to call it, having these experiences now that people and science and spirituality have kind of come together to prove that it's actually real. And this is a massive area of creating new quality world pictures around who am I? Like, who am I? Not this physical version of myself that goes out and builds businesses and achieves and I'm married and I've got a title and I've got kids. Beyond that, who am I beyond the physical? Who am I in the spiritual, the unknown, tapping into my intuition and my higher self? We're going to do a whole nother podcast around the difference between ego and intuition, but this is a segue into that. Like, when am I actually tuning in and listening to my intuition versus these quality world pictures, which are typically created in the mind and are created from fear or lack or scarcity? And I'm going to segue over to Tracey because this is her field of expertise.
But mine would be your similar story, Greg. I didn't even really know that it existed until I started on this journey, and it was like opening Pandora's box. Like, it has just been crazy. But for me now, that area in my life would be the most important one for me. It would hold the most significance and success. And for me, success looks like that relationship with self. You know, we talk a lot to our clients about redefining and looking at their life. You're kind of not aware of what you're not aware of. So it's like if I look at these areas in my life and go, what have I created? What is the picture that I hold in my mind that deems whether I'm successful or not? Often you realize they're not really 100% correct, or maybe they need to be updated. You know, we see clients that have strived their whole life for this plan. It's almost like they get on this pathway to what they deem as that success, and they just, you know, push, and they do, you know, create a lot of amazing success, but then turn up and go, why am I not feeling fulfilled or happy right now? And realizing that that's really out of date, and that once picture of success has actually changed, but they almost haven't kind of, you know, matched it.
100%. So that was about mental, physical, and spiritual health and quality world pictures from a very, very young age, and the identification that you created as a young child around who you felt like you had to be to create the life that you wanted. It then rolls over into all of the other key pillars. So pillar 4, 5, and 6. Well, pillar 4 is your love partner. So if you're married or in a relationship with an intimate partner, then the next pillar is parenting and family. So we are kind of the conduit between our family of origin. So we've got our siblings and our mum and our dad. And then if you've got children like Tracey and I, we've got our children, and our children become us, and we picked up a lot of beliefs and conditions from our parents. And then the other pillar under love and relationships is friends and interests. So when you have these quality world pictures, especially I'm talking from myself now as a married businessman, I had these quality world pictures that I had to be highly successful and significant and give my family everything that I desired, and then they would be happy. And if they weren't happy and I was giving them so much, then I was confused, because I'd just be like, are they ungrateful? I'm like, I'm worked so hard to give you this amazing life. Look at where you live. Look at what we have. And if they didn't have the same world picture around what that meant, then I was confused, or I'd get upset, or I'd get angry, or it would trigger me not feeling like I've done enough and I'm not good enough. And this was a massive eye-opener, because I didn't realize that I was creating conflict in my marriage and conflict in home, and being irritable and angry and frustrated so often at home because everybody else wasn't fitting into Greg's world picture around what happiness looks like from a monetary and a success perspective. So I've just kind of opened up myself for Tracey to come in and talk to that?
There's no comment there. I don't know. I see it time and time again that, we men working so hard to give the life that they so desperately want to give their family, but in doing that, it's almost repels some of those connections because they lose sight of why they were doing it in the first place rather than the how to do. Would that be right?
Totally. So this will relate to so many people. And it was so conflicting for me for so long until I did the inner work and I changed my quality world pictures. If Tracey was unhappy, I was confused. And Tracey would literally say to me, when are you ever going to be happy? And I would say, if you're happy, I'm happy. So I was disempowering myself, and I had this world picture that if I give my family an amazing life, a beautiful home, a beautiful lifestyle, they didn't have to worry about anything financially, then they would have to be happy. And if they were happy, then I was happy. But what Tracey wanted was just time with me. She didn't want me to work harder. She didn't want me to be out of the home. Well, sometimes she did. But my world picture was I just need to give more, create more. And it become this selfish obsession of me becoming a workaholic and breaking myself down and not being present and not being truly available when that's all she wanted. This conflict is massive in most marriages, where the man thinks he is doing everything that he's meant to do as a man to create the success, to give the family the lifestyle, and the wife just wants time. Quality time, wants him to listen, wants him to be present, wants him to be available. But the man's mind will not allow him to relax and be present. Happens so often.
Happy wife, happy life. Is that the saying?
Yeah, well, that's the saying us guys say, happy wife, happy life. But again, that is putting, for men, this is putting, and women, right? So this isn't just men. This is putting our happiness outside of ourselves. There is so many men that believe if their wife is happy, they'll be happy.
Yeah, but if you were honest, you were doing it for us. Obviously, at one point was the main provider, but realistically, it came back to those old things of wanting that significance and stature for yourself.
100%.
So there was, those kind of ego-based desires within this place of service to your family, but that's what those pictures are about. It's about reassessing and evolving. I think people stagnate in their life so often that we create this view and we just kind of, we just become so asleep on that path to obtain it that we don't stop to ask, do I actually want this for myself? Will that actually kind of bring that success and happiness for me? Maybe we go on to that next point now, Greg, quality questions, because this is a big one. This is how we would start to shift to possibly change some of these pictures, and it's asking better questions of ourselves. So when we ask a question and we want an instantaneous answer, we're actually just asking our mind, and our mind can only draw from the past, and the mind holds a lot of insecurity, a lot of fears. It doesn't really want to recreate our mistakes, so it will remind us of those often. So really we're just drawing on that information. If I ask an open-ended question of myself and I leave it open, I'm asking for a higher place to answer. I think before we were talking about that spiritual connection and we were talking about connection to oneself and that truth. That higher place within ourselves, it holds like a higher template, I want to say, a higher calling. It's like what would be the most fulfilling path for us. And so when we ask those open-end questions, it's like we're kind of giving it over to this higher place to answer, the place that hasn't been created yet. The mind can't answer these things for us because it functions from the past and limitation. So it's like if I ask better questions and not be in such a rush, have you ever had that divine inspiration or that kind of knowing that comes in? That's a higher place answering. And it almost just kind of leaves it open to really be I'm starting to question some of these things in myself. Maybe I don't want to kind of just recreate more of my future based on my past, because let's be honest, maybe that hasn't been the most fulfilling place and there's another place that exists.
if you are questioning yourself and questioning a lot of areas of your life, your mind will probably try and stop you from doing it because it's fearful. It's fearful that I've done the wrong thing, I've made a mistake, I'm not good enough, I'm on the wrong path. Like these narratives, this negative self-talk, it manifests in the mind and it makes us try and shut down these quality questions or these new intentions and visualizations. But I encourage you to sit with them, because if you fight them, that's when the negative narrative or self-talk actually expands. But if you sit with them and you ask yourself, why am I questioning this? Why have I lost passion for my business? Why am I not able to be present with my family? Like if you ask these quality world questions and you actually allow yourself to take time for the answers to come in and not be so impatient expecting an answer to always come. Now, the ego will always answer you. Like if you allow the ego, it will give you messages constantly. But we're talking about the quiet voice of the intuition. We're talking about being connected, being in an environment and silent space that you can actually ask a question and tune in. And as Tracey says, might take a couple of 3 days, might even be a week before the answer comes in. Yeah. So not being so impatient and trying to rush answers, because when you're seeking your internal truth, usually it'll be a sign or a message will come to you at a later stage. But the mind doesn't like operating over that period of time. It wants to just figure everything out right now.
That's why when it comes into it, the healing work's so important, because it's clearing away all of these limitations, our fears, our insecurities, our past beliefs. It's like clearing away the past so we can recreate something new for ourselves. We've talked a few times about a framework that allows you to assess your life. We'll put the link in again to that.
Yeah.
Because, looking at your life and starting to assess, what does success honestly mean in this area to me?
100%. So just before we wrap up this podcast, I actually want to touch on the last 3 pillars, the success pillars of the 9 pillars of success, love, and happiness, because these are the pillars that usually control our thoughts. And that is your business, career, finance, lifestyle, and your impact and legacy. Now, a lot of people that we talk to that are similar to myself, we are very over energy and over focused in those success pillars for most of our life, because we want to create a good lifestyle, right? It consumes more of our time, especially if you're in a high leadership position, corporate, or you're building a business and you've got a lot of people that you're responsible for and a lot of revenue and cash flow and clients and development and innovation and just going through market condition changes and all of that sort of stuff. If we have these fixed kind of quality world pictures of what success always looks like, and we're not open and agile to move and change and adapt with other external things that are happening in the marketplace, this is where it can actually create negative success, is because we often are so fixed in these beliefs and these mindsets around a way of which something should be done that we will fight tooth and nail for it to work and operate and become what we believe it should be. And we're way off path, what we're actually meant to be doing in business or in life, or how we can create impact and legacy and all that sort of stuff. And then that plays on our mental, physical, and spiritual health. That pulls us away from our family because we think that we've got to work harder, or we've got to do more hours, or we've got to grind it and hustle more in business to kind of fight for these world pictures. It honestly doesn't have to be that hard. And when you start to break down and have these paradigm shifts and let go of some of these world pictures that may have served you to get to where you are now, but are not serving you to get to the next level of where you want to go, when you start breaking them down and start dissolving them and start asking new questions of yourself of where do I want to be? Who am I? Like really, truly exploring yourself and where you want the second half of your life to go, and what you want your marriage to look like, and how you want to show up as a father, and how you want to look after your mental, physical, and spiritual health. When you start to really unpack that and break through the fear of the constraints of these pictures that we created at a young age, this is where real transformation happens. This is where we can go through so many paradigm shifts that we can create whatever we desire without limitation. And this is ultimately what we're here to do. This is our purpose. Our purpose is to actually find and work towards and align with our soul's purpose, our soul's gifts. Okay? All the other stuff is just what we need to create in the physical world so that we can survive. But there's so much more. There is so much more.
I just find like people have often sacrificed the one thing that they really truly want, like even in business, they, right at the start, possibly freedom, and then they sacrifice their freedom. And I think people get so stuck and don't know how to get out of it. But the first place is to almost becoming aware of what you've created or what's even that driving force for the creation.
So if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you're not where you want to be, if you feel like you're at a point in your life where it's time to evolve and transition and there's so much more and maybe there's a new path, then we encourage you, you'll see in the show notes, the life assessment, the 9-pillar life assessment. The first place to start is by literally assessing and unpacking all of those pillars of your life. It'll just present to yourself where the focus needs to be, because we typically avoid the pillar that needs the most work. And we've been conditioned for years. This is another belief system to just focus on your strengths. And if we focus on the weakest pillar and we evolve the weakest pillar, it actually elevates all other pillars in our life dramatically. So I encourage you, if this podcast makes a lot of sense and resonates with you, at least do the life assessment so that you can really paint yourself a new picture. You can start looking at some new quality world pictures. You can start asking yourself, it will help you ask yourself new quality questions, which are really, really important. So thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Hope you really enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you in next week's.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Evolved CEO podcast. If you value the information that is in our podcast, please like, subscribe, and add a review to our podcast page, because it'll help us understand the value that you are receiving, and more importantly, spread the word of this podcast. Also, share it with your friends and your family. Now, every listener of our podcast gets a free gift from us, and this is our 9 Pillars of Success, Love and Happiness life assessment. This is the exact same life assessment that our high-level clients, which are CEOs and business leaders, go through on an annual basis so that they can assess and reflect the past 12 months of their life and then plan their desired outcome for the next 12 months of their life. And this is our gift to you for listening in. So please follow the links below and you'll find the link to the assessment page. You'll also find Tracey and my social media links. We would love for you to connect with us on our social media channels, follow our additional content on there, as we want to provide as much value as we can in the event of helping you create more success, love and happiness in your life. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.